My name is Aaron Cairo, and I've been skateboarding for most of my life. I grew up in a very small town in Montana where at the time there were literally no other skateboarders. Over a short period of time, I taught myself how to do almost every skateboard trick and really gained a solid base for all of my skateboarding from then on out. I developed a pattern and technique on learning tricks not only fast, but so you have them down well. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to build a solid foundation for all of your skateboarding and learn the fundamental skateboarding tricks. We will be covering the following basic tricks in this video. First thing is just riding your board and getting comfortable with your board. Riding includes turning, stopping, and anything in between. The following steps are learning to ollie, frontside 180, backside 180, hop shove-its, frontside shove-its, heel flips, and finally kick flips. These steps are meant to give you a guideline to follow and go from the easiest to hardest. If you are a little shaky with one trick and you go on to the next one, or you skip a trick in this order, you can have troubles as you learn more difficult tricks in the future. People have learned these tricks in different orders, but this is again just a guideline to make it easier for you and give you an exact path to follow as you learn how to skate. Just as the tricks themselves are broken down into the exact gradient step in learning, so are each step of each trick broken down to give you the easiest possible gradient. This is an example of each step of learning how to ollie. You can practice each step on its own, and if you ever have a problem on one step, you can just go back to the previous step until you get that one, eventually putting it all together until you get the full trick itself. The way I made the video is to break down every step of each trick, starting from the foot position to the very basics of just popping the board and sliding your foot up the board, so you know every part of the trick. Knowing every part of the trick gives you the ability to take a step back and see what part of the trick you're really missing when you try the full thing, so then you can practice just that step on its own. So when you're using this video, I want you to practice each step as I go over it, and don't go on to the next step until you really have that one. It's in this way that you're going to be able to learn all of these tricks and get them all down really well. The reason I chose the tricks to be learned in these steps is because they introduce the least amount of change in between the tricks. For example, once you learn how to ollie, all you have to change is swinging your shoulders to do the frontside 180. So you should be able to get that next step down very easy. I want to make it an easy gradient for you to learn all these tricks, so just follow the path that I've given you and you'll be able to learn them all really well. Before you get started skating, I want to familiarize you with your board and all of its parts, so you can choose the best deck for you. There's so many different boards and equipment to choose from that correctly picking a board can be a very hard task. A lot of equipment and what is best is based on personal opinion and depends on what kind of skating you're into. Starting with your skateboard deck, the most important factor here is the width. Skateboards typically range from 7.5 inches to 8.25 inches in width. For tech skating and flip tricks, people generally use smaller width as it's easier to flip, and for ramps and stairs, people generally use wider boards because they have a wider space to land on. Also, how big your feet are is a factor as well, because if you have small feet and you ride an 8-inch board, it'll be very hard to learn kickflips. I wear size 10 shoes and skate a 7.62 width of board, just to give you an example. Grip tape is the rough, blacktop, gritty material that sticks to the top of your board and gives you traction and control of the board. Hardware is what holds your trucks onto the board. The important factor here is just to make sure that they are the right length so the bolt doesn't stick up, and that they are long enough to hold your trucks on. Here are your trucks, which you want to make sure match the width of your board. 7.75 trucks for a 7.75 width of board, for example. Next, onto the wheels. Your wheel size is the most important factor here. If your wheels are too big, the board will be too heavy and hard to flip. If your wheels are too small, you will literally be stopped on every crack and rock you hit. I recommend 52mm wheels because they are small enough to flip easily and big enough to roll well in most terrain. Now the bearings are the metal rings inside of your wheels, which allow your wheels to roll. There are many different kinds of bearings, and for beginners I suggest a moderately priced bearing that still works well but won't set you back too much. Now that you're familiar with the different parts of your skateboard, grab your deck and locate the following parts: skateboard deck itself, trucks, wheels, bearings, hardware, and grip tape. Now we'll get on to riding your board. The first thing I'll be covering in this video is the basics of riding. Now before you even get started, you need to find a good open area where you can move around, there's not a lot of cars, there's not a lot of rocks, and you can just ride safely. Skate parks are good, also just any empty parking lots work well too. Next, I want you to really set up your trucks to a point that's comfortable. Now this is how you tighten or loosen the trucks. You adjust this bolt right here. So I want you to adjust them loose and tight and then stand on your board and see how it feels. As you can see, my trucks are quite loose. I prefer it that way, and it helps out my balance because when I need to adjust from side to side, my trucks can move, and they move with the way that my body moves, so I don't fall off the board, but the board just moves and I turn a little bit. You're going to need your trucks a little bit loose to do some of the turns we're going to learn. So stand on your board, readjust your trucks, and find a point that's really comfortable for you, and it'll differ from each person's weight as they stand on that board. Next is figuring out which way you ride. You can imagine if you run and jump on a sheet of ice, which foot would you naturally put forward? Would you put your right foot forward, or would you put your left foot forward? Right foot forward is called goofy, left foot forward is called regular. This differs from person to person, and it's really just a personal preference type thing. It doesn't mean you're going to be better at skateboarding if you're left foot forward or better at skateboarding if you're right foot forward. You just want to find out which foot is most comfortable for you, and that's how you want to learn. It's really important that you learn your tricks that way so that you're doing it properly the whole time. Now to get started pushing, you want to put your front foot straight on the board just like it's shown here, and it's going to be just as if you're walking. It's really the same movement, and that's how I want you to think of it, just to keep it very easy. So take your front foot, whichever you decided is best, whether it's going to be your right foot or your left foot, and put it on that board and just walk away. You can step like I'm stepping here, and just take that as a first practice step of getting moving on your board and getting your balance down. So you have your front foot on the board straight and your back foot off on the side, and then you're just using that to push. And then once you get moving, you can put your back foot on the board just like it's shown there. Once your back foot is on the board, you're going to move your front foot so it's no longer straight, but it's sideways, so you're standing on the board in the riding position. So get pushing, your front foot is straight, and then as soon as you put that back foot on, you're going to turn that front foot like is shown right here. And then you can just ride from there. Because when you're riding, your front foot isn't going to be straight. And then each time you take off your back foot to push, you're going to turn that foot. So it's turn, push, put the back foot back on, and turn the front foot again. And then you can ride. I want you to practice this step a lot. Honestly, it's probably the step that gets skipped the most. And it's probably the biggest skipped gradient in the whole of skateboarding. Kids come to me and they say, I don't know how to kickflip, but they never really learned how to push and ride their board properly. This step is extremely important, and it's really worth putting in a good amount of time on it. Next step is stopping. To do this, simply just take off your back foot as if you were pushing and drag it along the ground, stopping your board. I want you to practice this one a bit and get comfortable. I want you to get comfortable with the balance on your board moving and your balance on your board stopping. This isn't very good on your shoes, but it is a good way to stop, and it should be learned well. The next way to stop is dragging your tail on the ground. So first I want you to just stand still and tap your tail on the ground like I'm doing here. You bend your front knee and you keep your back knee straight, pushing your tail into the ground with enough force and drag to cause you to stop. This is one I really want you to learn well because it is the first step to ollieing and many other tricks. So get moving and bend your front knee, causing the front of your board to come up, and put your back foot and your tail into the ground, dragging along the ground until you stop. Don't lean too far back as you'll slide out, and don't lean too far forward because you just won't do anything. You won't stop the board actually. I want you to practice this one a lot. Practice dragging, make a game out of it, see how far you can drag your tail on the ground stopping. Just get really good with the balance aspect of dragging that tail on the ground and stopping the board. This is going to help you out a lot in all of your future tricks. Now that you got stopping the board down, we're going to go into turning the board. The first kind of turn is called a kick turn, and it's where you lift up your front trucks and you turn. If you really got your balance down on stopping, this one should be a piece of cake for you. Just don't push down as hard as you would to stop the board, but just go about halfway, just enough to lift your front trucks up off the ground while turning the front of your board in the direction which you want to go. It also helps to turn your upper body and your shoulders in the same direction. The next kind of turn is just where you lean on the board, causing it to turn. For this one, you're going to need to have your trucks a little bit looser so you can turn from side to side easier. For this one, you're just going to practice leaning from one side and then the other, and depending on how hard you lean is how fast you're going to be able to turn. So I want you to practice first just turning really slowly, leaning to the side, and then get to where you can turn faster, going both different directions. This direction where I turn towards my heels is called front side, and the direction where I turn toward my toes, as is shown right here, is called backside. So learn both backside and front side turns, and doing both the kick turn and the lean turn. Really get your balance down on these well, because it's going to help you out with all the tricks you're going to be learning. The next part is just getting super comfortable and doing all of the above. I want you to just get out on your board and ride around. Ride in a parking lot, ride over cracks, dodge cracks. I want you to ride to school. Just ride whenever you can, even if you're just pushing your board, because the more you're pushing, the more comfortable you're going to be getting. This first step, like I said earlier, cannot be understated. You can never be too comfortable riding your skateboard, so I want you doing this one a lot. Every day when you go out skating, the first thing I want you to do is just get on your board and ride around. Loosen up your muscles, ride the board, get pushing, and start feeling good, get the blood pumping. Before going on to the next step, you need to be very comfortable pushing, stopping the board with your back foot, stopping the board with your tail, and turning the board in all different directions, both by leaning and by doing the kick turn where you lift up your front truck. These steps, like I said, are very, very important. They should be practiced a lot, and they should really be practiced every single time you go out to skateboard. It's the easiest and first thing to all of your skateboarding, so don't underestimate the riding basics. Now that you're comfortable with your riding basics, we're going to learn how to ollie. I'm going to break this into a few simple steps so it's easy to follow and see what step you're doing right or wrong. To ollie, set up your feet in this position with your front foot straight on the board, just back from your front bolts, and your back foot on the ball of your foot, placed on the edge of the tail. Now step 1 is the same action you learned from doing the kick stop and dropping your back foot, except that you are not dragging your tail on the ground, you are popping it off of the ground. Your tail is going to smack the ground quickly, and this is the first part of your ollie. So make sure your feet are in the ollie position, and then just work on bending your front knee, keeping your back leg straight, and smacking your tail on the ground. I want you to do this a few times just over and over and over, just to get the balance and to feel steady on your board while you're doing it. Step 2 is dragging your foot up the board. Notice my knee, it goes straight out, and my foot slides up the board, turning the bottom of my foot into a 90-degree motion. First it's flat, then it turns and slides. This is very important. So this is what I want you to stand still and practice. Take the time to practice this step good, because this is what actually lifts your board up into the air and actually what causes the ollie. The more you practice this now, the better your ollies are going to be. I also want you to take note that at no time was I pushing my foot down on the board. I was always sliding it up, dragging it up the board, which is what causes the lift. Once you've practiced dragging your foot up the board enough, we'll move on to step 3, which is the timing between popping your board and dragging your foot up the board. Notice in this frame I had already bent down and I'm starting to pop up with my shoulders and my arms. My back foot is popping down as hard as I can, and I slap that back foot down on the ground while I simultaneously begin to drag my front foot up. You can see in this frame here it's already starting to go. Now my back foot, I start bringing it up into the air as I slide that front foot up and continue it going. You can see here it's literally on my nose and it looks like it's going to come off of the skateboard, but it doesn't. So you want to drag that front foot up while you bring your back foot up after it's popped, and the timing between those two is very crucial. So you want to slap the back first and then slide it up. And you can see here my front foot continues to come up and I'm bringing my back foot up, and you can see the motion of the change of the back knee there. I'm starting to bend both knees as I begin to level out the ollie. Now my back knee is going to come up even more, and my front knee is going to start to level out. Once your ollie hits the peak of your height, you can continue bringing your back foot up, bending your back knee, and you can start to straighten out your front leg a little bit. This is what people call boning their ollie, or just putting their ollie down a little bit. You can see here I'm about perfectly level in the air. Both feet are right on the trucks, and that's about right where you want to be. Now my front leg starts to straighten out a little bit more even there, and now I start to extend my legs and bring it down so I don't land in a crouched position. From this point on, my legs are just going to extend down more and more as I land. You want to keep your feet over your trucks as well as possible, but the main thing that you're going to be working on this step is just popping that board and sliding your front foot up, which brings your board up into the air. That's the most important part, just the timing between the pop and the slide. Once you got this part down and you're getting your board into the air, landing is going to be a piece of cake, and really anytime you land on your board is going to be awesome. So practice this trick a lot and really get it down, because it's really basic to all the other tricks. The 180s, the kick flips, the hill flips. You really need to be able to ollie before you can do any of that stuff, because it's all in there. If you start having trouble getting your board up into the air, just go back to practicing the previous steps of the pop and the foot slide, and you should be able to get it eventually. This trick does take some practice, but I know you guys can get it down. Now that you've got your ollies down, the next trick we're going to learn is how to frontside 180. For the frontside 180, you set up your feet the same as you would for an ollie. You could put your back foot a little bit towards your heel more if you want to, just to give you a little extra pressure as you turn, but it is basically the same as an ollie. Step 1 to this trick is basically just getting comfortable popping your board while you turn your shoulders at the same time. So I want you to practice popping the board and turning your shoulders. Your shoulders are going to be turning as you pop, so that's a motion that you need to get used to. You're going to turn your head and your shoulders at the same time while you pop your tail. So I don't want this to throw off your balance or to feel too weird, so get some practice on it. Step 2 is basically dragging your foot and again turning your shoulders as you do so. The frontside 180 is basically just an ollie while you turn your shoulders and your head and then bring your feet around, making the 180. So once you got the ollies down, it shouldn't be too much of a harder step to do the frontside 180, which makes it the next trick in the lineup. Step 3 is putting all these steps together so you can do the full trick, so I'm going to do some stills here to explain it further. You see, as I start to bend down and then I come up, my shoulders and my head are already turning. You have to have your shoulders and your head turning before you pop, otherwise when you get in the air you won't be able to turn your board. So you can see my shoulders are already at a 90-degree angle to where my board is, and I haven't even hit the tail on the ground yet. Now that I pop, I slide that front foot up just like I would with an ollie, except for my head and my shoulders are turning. As you can see, I turn the whole time. Now my front knee is very bent, as you can see, as it's bending up, and my back leg starts to come forward. Now the board's at a 90-degree angle, and I bring my back foot, my left foot, around. You can also practice this trick by just landing on the front trucks and doing a little frontside pivot, just to get used to turning your shoulders and sliding your back leg around. But I think if you guys really got your ollie down, that this isn't too much of a jump for you. So you can see now that my board is starting to go into the full 180, I start to extend my legs further to land. And as I come down to the ground, I just put all 4 wheels down. And obviously you want to land with your feet on the bolts as much as possible, just because that's the best place, so you're not on the nose or tail and slide out. And that's all there is to this trick, then you just land and ride away. So you got the pop, the turn, and the 180, and that's it. One secret to this trick is really being able to swing your arms and get your upper body moving, and then your legs will just follow. I personally find this trick a little easier moving with a little bit of speed, but you can really learn it either way. You can start out still, you can start out on the carpet or on the grass, But like I said, I think it's a little easier moving because then you have a little bit of momentum. And you have a little momentum when you turn your shoulders and your head too. Spend some time getting this one really down because it's really fun and it's a really good trick to do downstairs or over gaps or whatever you like really. And later on when you want to learn how to frontside flip, it's obviously going to come in handy. Also, each of these tricks build one upon another, so really learn each one as you go and really get it down really well. You don't want to move on until you really have it because you'll have problems on the later tricks. Now that you've got a few basic tricks in the frontside 180 down, it's time to learn how to backside 180. The foot placement for this is basically the same as the ollie in the frontside 180. You could change the position of your back foot a little more towards the toe side if you want to give you a little more leverage, but it's not necessary. Step 1 of the backside 180 is again just learning how to pop and getting your balance down as you swing your arms in the backside 180 position. So before you even pop, you're already going to be swinging your arms and turning your head and turning your shoulders. It's this motion that's going to allow your legs to be able to turn in the air and do the backside 180. So I actually recommend spending a little bit of time doing this, just popping your board and getting the feel of turning your head and your shoulders as you hit your tail on the ground. It will help you out later, and trust me, no matter how stupid you look, when you're doing nice backside 180s, you'll thank me. It's important on these tricks to get each step down as they come, so then you can put the full thing together in the end. Step 2 is getting used to the motion of sliding your foot up as you turn your shoulders and pop your board. You're just adding in the additional piece of sliding your foot up so you can get used to that motion as your shoulders turn. This might seem a little bit too basic and easy of a step, especially after you learn the frontside 180, but trust me, if you get each of these down as you go, you'll be able to do nice backside 180s without much struggle and effort in the learning process. Also, the other point with breaking down each step so small like this is that if you have problems doing the full thing, you can break it down to practice the smaller steps as you go. Step 3 is putting all the steps together with the pop, the turn, and doing the full backside 180. So let's break down each step here as we go. As you can see, I bend my knees, and as I pop up, I'm swinging my arms in a backside 180 motion. See, my right arm is coming up, my shoulders are turning, and my head is turning as I begin the pop. Now right there, my board slaps on the ground, and my front leg slides up, sliding my foot up the board, doing the ollie position. My shoulders are turning, so now all my legs have to do is follow the motion of my shoulders as they go. It's very important that you have your head and your shoulders turned. Usually it's about 90 degrees before you even pop the board, and then your legs can just follow behind that. Once you get into the air and you're doing the 90 position, then you can turn and pivot your back leg around to do the full 180. So you see I start to extend my legs there. After having my knees in the crouch position at the height of my 180, you just extend your legs down, try and land as close to the bolts as possible, and land as solidly on your board, then you can ride away. So practice the step of swinging your arms and turning your body while popping your tail, and then step on your board and do the full thing with the swing, the pop, and turn the 180. Sometimes when I do this trick, it's kind of like an ollie, and then I feel almost like I ollie and then turn my legs late in the air, like almost like a late backside 180. It's just because my arms are spinning, and then I do the regular ollie, and then I just turn it afterwards. To get this down, you can take an easier gradient step of just pivoting on your front truck. Some people find it a little harder to do an ollie, land on the nose, and then pivot the backside 180. So I didn't throw that in there as an additional step, because I think once you really have your ollies and your frontside 180s down, you can go straight into learning the backside 180s, and I'm pretty sure that you guys can get it without too much trouble. But like I said, swinging your arms is a key factor, and it's really the secret to this trick, if there was a secret to it. So practice this one well and get it down. I think you guys are going to have a lot of fun with this trick. Now that you got a few of your basic tricks down and your board control is increasing, we're going to move on to learning how to pop shove it. The foot position for the pop shove it is your front foot is just down from the bolts and it's a little bit slanted on the board, and your back foot is really off the side a little bit to give you a little extra room to shove that back foot to the side as you start to learn your pop shove it's. Step 1 of learning how to pop shove it is learning how to slide that back foot. So I want you to hold your board like this and just practice kicking your back foot like this and sliding your toe off of the edge like that. Just want you to practice this motion for a minute, and then we're going to practice popping the board and doing the pop shove it with your toe. Step 2 is just practicing flicking the board with your toe. So for this step I want you to just stand off the board, have your board there, and just move your tail and slide the foot like this, causing the board to do the pop shove it 180. So stand there and practice this for a bit. I want you to practice this without being on top of your board because it gives an easier gradient, so you're not going to cause your board to kick into your legs or land funny and fall, but you just get to practice shoveting the board. Step 3 is just learning how to do the shove it without the pop. So you're going to put your front foot there and you're going to hold it as still and over the board as possible without moving it. Your front foot guides the board while your back foot spins it around. So with your back foot you're going to do the motion that we practice, and you're just going to kick it really hard straight back. You're not going to slap the tail on the ground, but you're just going to kick it backwards, having your front foot control the board to keep it steady. Step 4 is adding the pop into all of this. So put your feet in the pop shove it position with your front foot a little bit slanted just back from the front bolts, and then practice just slapping your tail on the ground for a minute. As you add in the slap to this, it's going to add an additional gradient of your board flying up, so you want to practice just popping and keeping your front foot there to steady the board around and catch it as it comes around. The purpose of your front foot is to keep your board from flipping. You want to keep it nice and flat and underneath you. Step 5 is putting all this together, popping the board, spinning it, catching it, landing and riding away. So we're going to start in the crouch position, and as I come up on the board, you can see my arms are going straight up. My front foot is a little bit slanted on the board. This is very important because you don't want your front foot to be flat on the board. You want it a little bit slanted just so you can pop it around. And as you can see, my toe begins to scoop down and underneath. My heel is lifting off the top of the board, and my back foot, which is the part I want you to pay special attention to, starts to slide under. This is called the scoop, and it's very important that you learn it really well here because it's going to come in handy on many other tricks. You see my back leg continues to come up, my knees bend up. I try and keep my front foot as close to the board at all times. If you could actually leave it on the board, that's the best because it's going to keep it from spinning. And you can see my front foot comes around to land flat on the board, guide it around so it doesn't spin or do any extra turns or anything, catches the board in the air, and then just brings it down for a nice, good, safe landing. As long as you really practice popping the board and the shove it part of the board where the board does the 180 and catching it with your front foot, as long as you practice all those parts really well before you actually try to jump and land on it with both feet, I think this trick is going to be really easy for you guys. So if you have any trouble doing the full trick, just break it down to the previous steps of popping the board and catching it with your front foot without even landing on it with your back foot. Just keep your back foot off of it. And then once you're ready and you're fully confident, you can just put that back foot on and do the full pop shove it. The secret to this trick, like I said before, if there really was one, is keeping your front foot close to the board to guide and control the board around while it does the 180 motion, and then you can put it straight down and land on it with both feet. The other really important factor about this trick is the fact that it's the first trick you're going to learn where your board is doing something underneath you and you're jumping above it and then you're landing on it and catching it. So it's a really good idea to start learning how to catch your board well, because once you go on to frontside shove-its, heel flips, and kick flips, if you really have the concept of having your board doing something underneath you while you jump above it then catching it and stopping its rotation with your feet and then landing, the other tricks will become much easier for you and you'll be able to do them piece of cake when you get there. Practice this trick a lot. It's a lot of fun. Once you guys really get it down and you can do just the shove-its riding and you can do the pop shove-it, you will have a lot of fun doing it, that's for sure. Now that you're comfortable riding your board and you've got a good handle on a lot of the basic tricks, the next trick we're going to learn is the front side pop shove-it. For the foot position on this, have your front foot straight on the board, just back from those bolts similar to an ollie position, but your back foot is a little bit off the side edge of the tail to the back. Step 1 of this trick is just getting your back foot used to sliding forward on the board and just doing that little pop with your toe that's going to get your board to do the 180. Practice just putting your foot on the board and sliding it forward with that little motion that I'm doing there. Step 2 of this trick is getting used to popping your board and making it do the full 180. It's good to get your back foot used to just doing that slide motion so that when you actually stand on the board and you're ready to pop and do the front shove, you can make your board do the full 180 with little to no problems. So I recommend standing off your board and standing still and practicing this part for a little while. So you want to just stand back a little bit, put your left foot or whichever foot you're going to have back on the board and just pop it around. Step 3 is actually standing on the board, getting the pop of your back foot down, and getting the rotation of your back foot without actually standing on the board the full way. I want you to practice the pop each time because your feet are in different positions, and with every different position your balance changes a little bit. So in this trick, you're going to put your front foot on, you're going to pop the board, and you're going to step forward because your back foot is sliding forward, causing your board to spin back. So your back foot is going to step forward, and then your front foot is going to stay on the board, catch it, and make sure that your board doesn't flip or spin or do any extra things so you can land on the top of it. Step 4 is putting all the above steps together so you can do the full trick. So put your feet in the front side shove-it position, bend down, and as you begin to bend up and extend your knees out, you can start to bend your front knee, causing you to bring the front of the board up and extend your back foot down. You can see how my toe snaps down and it starts to shoot out forward. My heel goes up into the air on my back foot, and my toe is really what pops that board into the air like that. My front foot lifts up off the board and just gets out of the way enough just to cause the rotation to move around without it hitting my front foot or it getting in the way. So with my left foot, I really just snapped it forward, causing the board to do the 180 rotation, and I kept my front foot close enough to the board so as it moves around like this, I can put it right back down on the board and catch it in the air like so. You can see the board was about to flip, it was about to do a little rotation, but my front foot was there in enough time to catch it to keep it flat in the air. This is very important. Now my legs just extend down once the board is caught, and I can land on all 4 wheels without having any problems at all. You just put your feet straight down on the board. So that's pretty much all there is to the front side shove-it. It's very important to get that snap down, and I think if you break it down to the previous steps of getting the pop and getting the 180 down with just your back foot, and then being able to pop it and catch it with your front foot without actually putting both feet on, but with just putting your front foot on, that you'll be able to do the full trick pretty easily and pretty well. This is a really fun trick, and it's cool to kind of have the board pop behind you a little bit. And once you guys get this one down really well, there's so many different variations that you can do with it. So just learn it really well and have tons of fun on this one. I know you guys are going to really like this trick once you get it down. Now that you've got some of the skateboarding basics down, we're going to get into your first flip trick, the heel flip. The foot position on the heel flip is just like this. Your front foot is just down from those front bolts. I have my front foot slanted a little bit, but you can also have it straight. And then your back foot is perched with your toe on the tail, slightly back from the top, more towards the heel side of your board. Step 1 to the heel flip is having your feet in the heel flip position and just getting that pop down again. I know you guys did this for the pop shove it, the ollie, the front side 180, the back side 180, and all the previous tricks, but I do want you to do this step again every time you have your feet in a different position. Because every time you change your feet, and even sometimes it's a little bit awkward with different tricks, your balance changes just a little bit. So get used to this part again. Step 2 is getting used to the flick of the board. This is where you're going to stand still on your board just like this and practice sliding your foot off. You can see it's almost like an ollie, except for the fact that your heel comes off the front side of the board, causing it to do the full rotation. You do click your heel down a little bit, but it's more of like a slide and a flick out than it is any kind of a downward motion. Because if you're going to be pushing your foot down, it's very hard to get your foot back up and over your board again. So you want to practice this part a lot. Notice the motion of my knee and how my foot flicks off the side of the board. There is a flick to the heel flip, just like there is a flick to the kick flip. And if you stand still and practice this motion enough, then it will help you to just get what your foot is going to be doing when you're doing the full trick. If you go straight to trying to pop and flick the board, it may just become a little bit too confusing and a little bit too hard for you. So that's why I wanted to break this down to its own separate step. Step 3 is where you're going to learn how to flip the board and catch it with your front foot. It's easiest to step off with your back foot and just practice that flick with your front foot. As you can see in these different shots, I just flick the board with my front foot, getting used to that motion so you can get the flick really down, and just leave your back foot off for now. Step 4 is flipping the board and catching it with your back foot. This is a little bit harder on the heel flip and you almost have to jump forward. But this is a definite step that you need to learn, because on the heel flip you're going to be catching the board with your back foot. So once you got the flick down with your front foot and you can step off and land it with your front foot, then practice stepping off and landing it with your back foot. Step 5 is where we're going to put the full heel flip together and land the full trick with both feet. Once you've learned to flick your board and land it with your front foot, and then flick the board and land with your back foot, it shouldn't be too much harder to flick the board and land with both feet. So here we go. You can see I'm very crouched and my feet are in the heel flip position. My back foot is a little bit off to the side of the board and my toes are hanging off the board just a little bit. You can see as I begin to pop down, my back foot starts to pop with the toe, my heel comes up off the board, and my foot is sliding up the board just like an ollie position. And then you can see right about here, my foot just flicks and my heel catches up on the top side of that board, which starts to flip into motion. Now, as you're in the air on these tricks, you have to be very careful watching your board as you jump. Some people have the idea that you have to jump super high. You really don't. What you have to get down more is the flick. If you get the flick of the board, then your board will spin fast and you don't have to jump high or low. You can see here I jump pretty high, this flip is pretty slow. And you can see as it comes around, my feet are waiting above the board. Now I want you to notice my feet were above the board the entire time. My foot did not flip down below the board, my heel did not go down causing the board to flip, but it flicked up and out. That's very important. So as soon as the board comes around, you can see the catch, and then I extend my legs to land. Usually you'll catch it a little higher with your back foot in the air, stopping the rotation, and then you can just put your front foot on, but in this one I kind of caught it with both feet. So that's the heel flip. Once you got the flick down and you're landing on it with both feet, just take a lot of practice and do it many times. I wanted to teach you guys this trick before the kick flip because it's closer to an ollie, and I think since it's closer to an ollie there's less differences introduced and you can kind of learn it faster. I may or may not be wrong. Some people learn the kick flips first and then the heel flips afterwards. I personally learned the heel flip before the kick flip, but now I can kick flip much better and much easier than heel flip. So yeah, this one just takes a little bit of practice, and it takes a little practice getting that flick of your heel down. But notice, again, my foot never goes below. One of the biggest misconceptions on the heel flip and on the kick flip is that you flip your foot down, but you don't. you actually flick your heel up and out. Just like on the kickflip, you flick your toe up and out. So like I said, practice this one a lot, and the better you get at it, the faster you'll get your flick, and the faster your board will be able to spin. If you can spin your board fast enough, then you don't have to jump very high, and you can keep it kind of low, or if you want to pop it higher, you can change your foot variation on the board, put on more of your foot or put on less of your foot. So I'll let you guys mess around with that a little bit. You can play around with the foot position on this trick a little bit and see what works best for you. As I said earlier, my back foot is off to the side a little bit, and then my front foot is off to the other side. I find that this kind of helps to balance it out and keep my body over the board so I'm not going too far forward or too far back. Practice this one a lot and really get it down well because it's a super fun trick. Now that you've got a good amount of tricks down, we're going to learn the last and final trick in the video. My personal favorite, the kickflip. For the foot position on the kickflip, you want to have your front foot just down from those top bolts, and it's going to be slanted like this. Like your toes are going to be right in between those bolts, and your back foot is going to be perched right on top of the board, with the ball of your back foot being the main part that's going to be popping the board. This is an important factor in getting the pop down. Step 1 to this is getting down the balance of just keeping your feet in this position and just popping the board. You can also practice like lifting the heel of your foot up just to start get the idea of having your toe come up and off the board. This trick is a little bit different because it's not the same part of your foot that's going to be sliding up and off like in the ollie or the heel flip, but it's the toe. Step 2 is getting used to sliding that toe up and off of the board. This part is so important and I cannot understate it enough. The thing that people usually do is they flip their foot down, causing their foot to go straight to the ground, but that's the biggest mistake that people make. So I want you to practice sliding your toe up and off of the board. You can see the marks that are being made on my board, and you can see there will be some damage to my shoe, but that's okay because you're going to learn how to kickflip, and kickflips definitely damage your shoes. Notice how my knee goes straight out and my foot slides up. This position of sliding your foot up the board at first is really uncomfortable. It doesn't feel very good, but you want to do this a lot to kind of get used to that motion. You want to get used to moving your knee and your foot in that motion. Now once you slide your toe up, I want you to pop your toe up and off the board. It's very important that you move your knee out and then your toe pops up. So your toe popping up and off the board is really the thing that's going to be flipping it. And I'll show you again, you can see the marks that are made on the board. Now here's another angle so you can see slide the foot up and then pop the toe up. This part is very important, so definitely spend some time just standing still and practicing your board in this motion. You're going to be flipping your board, catching with your back foot, and landing it just like that. Step 3 is getting the flick down and stepping off with your back foot. You're going to leave your front foot on the board and just get practice flipping the board. So you can see how my back foot literally almost just jumps back, and my whole board kind of goes back, but my back foot jumps off and my front foot stays in the air and lands on top of the board. Step 4 is getting practice flipping the board and catching it with your back foot. It's a little bit easier to start out catching it with your front foot because that's the foot that's flicking the board. And I know you guys are going to want to try and flick down to do that first step, but definitely practice flipping up, otherwise you'll never be able to do this trick. But this part right here is also really important because the thing is when you're going to be landing it with both feet, you're going to be catching the board with your back foot. So in this step you're not only practice flicking the board and jumping back with your front foot which lands on the ground, but you're going to practice catching the board with your back foot. Because when you're ready to put both feet on, that's how you're going to catch it, with your back foot. Step 5 is where we put it all together. So practice the flick, spinning the board, catching it with your back foot, and then landing it. And that's exactly how you're going to do the full kickflip. So here we go. You can see I bend down, and then as I'm coming up, from the crouching position, you'll see my toes start to be the prominent things which push down on the back of the tail, and also the toes are what controls and guides the flip of the board. So here we go. You can see my back heel is coming up and off the board, and my front heel is coming up and off the front of the board. My toe slaps down, causing the board to slap on the pavement, and my foot comes up straight directly up the board. You can't see it too well because it's being covered by the skateboard, but you can see my position there. This is the part where my toe begins to go up into the air. Notice my heel goes down and my toe goes up, and this is on the front foot there. So you can see the toe slides up and then it pops up the board, and that's what causes the rotation. You don't want to flick your toe down, you want to flick it up at all times. Now as soon as the rotation is complete, your back foot is right there to catch it, right in the air, just like you practiced on the previous step. And then you can put both feet on and just bring your legs down into the landing position, where you're going to extend your legs, land as close to the bolts as possible, and then just put your feet down and land. This trick isn't too hard if you just practice it a lot. If you do each of these steps really fully and completely, especially practicing flipping the board and stepping off with your front foot, and flipping the board and stepping off with your back foot, then it's going to be no problem putting them both together. I found this trick to be one of the most popular ones, and what I see people doing is they learn how to ollie, or they learn how to just ride their skateboard and they want to go straight to the kickflip. So they have problems. It's very important you learn the tricks in order. You're going to increase your board control with each one, and then by the time you get to the kickflip, it should be no problem for you. Another thing that people ask me all the time is, do I have to jump really high? How high do I need to jump to be able to kickflip? You don't need to be able to jump very high at all. It's just that you need to be able to flick your board properly. If you flick your board properly, it'll just spin underneath you no matter how low or high you jump. So once you really get it down, you can learn to flick your board fast, or you can learn to flick it slower. In order to do this, you can experiment with different foot positions. For example, if you put your front foot more on the board, more like an ollie, and then do the motions of the kickflip, your board is going to flip slower. And if you put your toe more off the side, less on the board, you'll be able to flick your board faster. So if I'm going to do a double kickflip, I'm going to put my foot a little bit more off the board, and I'm just going to flick it a lot harder with my foot when I slide it up and kick it up off the board. So if you're having problems getting your kickflip to flip all the way, experiment with putting your foot more or less on the board, and that will help you out. Practice this one a lot and really learn it well. It's one of my favorite tricks, and I know you guys are going to love it as well. Thanks for watching, and I wish you all the best of luck as you learn how to skateboard. If you run into any trouble on any of these tricks, cut back the gradient on the steps, as they do go from easiest to hardest. In this way of going back to practice the prior steps of each trick, it will be even easier for you to master each trick. If you run into problems, you can kind of work out which step you're having problems on by just thinking about which part of the trick you're not quite getting. For example, if you can't get your ollie into the air, you may need to practice sliding your foot up the board a little more before you go back to attempting to do the full trick. I will be making further videos to cover more tricks after the kickflip, and also videos that cover ledges, ramps, and rails as well, so stay tuned for those. I'm also in the process of creating a fully interactive membership program to give you more ways to interact and learn how to skateboard. So be on the lookout for that soon at brailleskateboarding.com. If you guys need help right now with any tricks that you're having problems with, go ahead and check out brailleskateboarding.com. You can post your questions, get help, and you can look at all the other videos that I've created over the years. I want to thank all you guys for all of your help and support. I really do appreciate it.